Hello everyone, my name is Priya and today we'll start a new topic, that is conditionals. Okay, so first of all, what is conditionals? I hope many of you have heard this topic and many of you relate this topic with conditions. ठीक है? So as the name suggests, if I talk about conditionals, it define condition. ठीक है? कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स जो होते हैं वो कंडीशन को डिफाइन करते हैं, राइट? फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ आई से इफ दिस हैपन दैट थिंग विल हैपन. ओके, अगर हम हिंदी में डिफाइन करें तो जब हम बोलते हैं कि अगर ऐसा हुआ तो ऐसा होगा, दीज आर द कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स. ओके, सो कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स कंसिस्ट ऑफ टू क्लॉजेस. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, इफ आई से दैट इफ यू स्टडी hard, you will pass. ठीक है? अब अगर मैं इस सेंटेंस के बारे में बात करती हूँ, इफ यू स्टडी हार्ड यू विल पास, इट डिफाइंस कंडीशन. अगर आप स्टडी करोगे देन यू विल पास. ओके, सो बेसिकली कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स होते क्या हैं? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, इट has two clauses, ठीक है, which are separated by commas, right? And in this, one of the clause defines a condition and the other clause defines a result. Okay, for example, suppose if I hide this part of the sentence, okay, if I hide this part of the sentence, what will remain? You will pass, right? So अगर मैं इस सेंटेंस को अकेला डिफाइन करती हूँ, it is a self sufficient statement. ठीक है, यू विल पास जो है इट इज़ अ सेल्फ सफिशिएंट स्टेटमेंट. इसको किसी और चीज़ की ज़रूरत नहीं है टू कंप्लीट दिस सेंस. ओके, सो दिस इज नोन एज द मेन क्लॉज. ओके, राइट? इट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज द प्रिंसिपल क्लॉज and the independent clause because it is not dependent on anything. Right? This is the main clause, principal clause, independent clause. Okay? It is also known as the result clause. Why result clause? I will tell you now. Right? Now if I say, what if I hide this part of the sentence? ठीक है? अगर हम इस part को ignore कर दें, what will remain? If you study hard. Now, is it a self-sufficient statement? No, right? If I talk about if you study hard, this just defines a condition. अगर आप hard work करो तो क्या होगा? ठीक है? If you study hard, then what will happen? So this defines a condition. That's why it defines. It is known as the conditional clause. ठीक है? It defines a condition. It is known as the conditional clause, the if clause and the dependent clause, right? So if I talk about these sentences, matlab if I talk about these clauses, again let us just come back to this thing. If you study hard, then what will happen? You will pass. तो अगर आप hard work करोगे then you will pass. ठीक है? So ये जो है if you study hard, this defines a condition and उसका result क्या है? You will pass. That's why it is also known as the result clause. ठीक है? So conditional statements basically होते क्या हैं? Conditional statements वो होते हैं जिसमें एक clause जो है वो condition को define करता है और second clause जो है वो result को define करता है. आपका जो conditional clause है वो आपके result clause के ऊपर dependent होता है. कंडीशनल क्लॉज अकेला सफिशिएंट नहीं है, इट इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन द रिजल्ट क्लॉज. ओके, सेकेंडली आई कैन ऑल्सो राइट दिस सेंटेंस लाइक दिस. इफ आई से यू विल पास इफ यू स्टडी हार्ड. ठीक है, सेम स्टेटमेंट है. द डिफरेंस इज दिस, मैंने रिजल्ट क्लॉज को पहले डिफाइन कर दिया है एंड देन देयर इज दी कंडीशनल क्लॉज. सेकेंडली यहाँ पे कोई कॉमा नहीं है. वाई? बिकॉज हेयर योर इफ इज वर्किंग एज अ कनेक्टर. राइट? क्लियर? हेयर इट दिस इज योर रिजल्ट क्लॉज and this is your conditional clause. Understood? So I hope this is clear कि conditional statements होते क्या हैं. ओके, वन मोर थिंग, यहाँ पे मैंने जो आपका कंडीशनल क्लॉज है इसको इफ क्लॉज डिफाइन किया है. इट इज़ मतलब ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है कि ज़रूरी है कि आपका जो कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट है वो इफ से स्टार्ट हो. देर आर मैनी कनेक्टर्स विच डिफाइंस द कंडीशन. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट प्रोवाइडेड, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट अनलेस, व्हेन, एज सून एज, ठीक है. तो ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है कि इसको इफ क्लॉज बोलते हैं, इसका मतलब है कि आपका जो कंडीशनल क्लॉज है वो हमेशा इफ से स्टार्ट होना चाहिए. क्लियर? सो दिस इज व्हाट कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट आर कॉल्ड. ठीक है, कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स मैं वापस रिपीट कर देती हूँ. कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स होते क्या हैं? इट डिफाइंस, इट हैज अ कंडीशन एंड अ रिजल्ट. द कंडीशन, कंडीशनल क्लॉज इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन द result. Okay, now next thing is how many types of conditional statements do we have? Okay, so there are in total 4 conditional statements. Okay, so let us just start with the first one, right? So the very first condition is known as possible condition. जो हमारी टाइप 1 कंडीशन होती है इसको टाइप 1 कंडीशन भी बोलते हैं. इट इज नोन एज पॉसिबल कंडीशन एंड द सेकेंड नेम फॉर दिस इज ओपन कंडीशन. ओके, नाउ व्हाई दिस इज नोन एज पॉसिबल कंडीशन? इसको पॉसिबल कंडीशन क्यों बोलते हैं? बिकॉज इट इज पॉसिबल टू फुलफिल दीज टाइप ऑफ कंडीशंस. ठीक है, वाई दिस इज नोन एज पॉसिबल कंडीशन? बिकॉज इट इज पॉसिबल टू फुलफिल दीज टाइप ऑफ कंडीशंस. एंड अगेन हम लोग कैसे किसी भी कंडीशन को आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे या व्हाट इज देयर रिलेटेड टू दी टेंसेस. ओके, सो जैसे हम टेंस को डिफाइन करते हैं, हम जब टेंसेस को डिफाइन करते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, obviously we know what is there in the tense, what does that mean, but if I talk about simple present tense, so मैं एक तरीका ये भी है जो नॉर्मली हम सबसे इजी तरीका मानते हैं, दैट इज़ कि उसका जो स्ट्रक्चर है वो जो है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल सब्जेक्ट प्लस फर्स्ट फॉर्म ऑफ वर्ब प्लस ऑब्जेक्ट. ओके, वैसा ही यहाँ पे भी है. इफ आई टॉक अबाउट पॉसिबल कंडीशन, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ पॉसिबल कंडीशन इज इट हैज़ इफ प्लस simple present tense in the conditional clause. Simple present tense means first form of verb in the conditional clause, and in the result clause we have will, shall, or can, or may plus first form of verb. Okay, so this is the structure of possible condition. ठीक है, if plus simple present tense in the conditional clause, will, shall, can, may plus first form of verb in the result clause. Okay, now let's have a look at the example. For example, if I say if it does not rain, I will go to school. Okay, so if I say if it does not rain, I will go to school. Fine. So if plus first form of verb, ठीक है, since this is a negative sentence, so that's why it has does not plus first form of verb. So if plus simple present tense in the conditional clause and will plus first form of verb in the result clause. Clear? So अब जैसे मैंने बोला था why it is known as possible condition, because it is possible to fulfill these type of condition. So if it does not rain in the present time, I will go to school in the future, right? I hope this is clear, right? Secondly, if I say if I find her address, I will send her an invitation. ठीक है, so if I find her address, again if plus first form of verb in the conditional clause, simple present tense in the conditional clause, and will plus first form of verb in the result clause. So if I find her address in the present time, I will send her an invitation in the future. So basically इतना तो I guess सबको clear हो गया होगा कि आपका जो possible condition है, it deals with present and future. If this happens in the present, then this can happen in the फ्यूचर, राइट. सो आपका जो फर्स्ट कंडीशन पॉसिबल कंडीशन होता है, इट डील्स विथ प्रेजेंट एंड द फ्यूचर टाइम, राइट. नाउ अब मैंने जैसे कि बोला था, इट इज़ नॉट नेसेसरी कि हमारा जो हर स्टेटमेंट है, हमारा जो हर कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट है, कंडीशनल क्लॉज है, वो इफ से स्टार्ट हो, राइट. सो इट कैन ऑल्सो स्टार्ट या इट कैन हैव एनी अदर थिंग्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मैं ऐसे डिफाइन करूं कि अनलेस यू वर्क हार्ड you will fail, right. So unless you work hard you will fail. अभी भी ये हमारा if clause ही है, conditional clause ही है, because it defines a condition. Unless you work hard, what will happen? You will fail. That is the result clause. ठीक है. Now unless defines what? If not. Unless जो है it itself is a negative word. That's why it will not take not with it. ठीक है. So unless you work hard, you will fail. That means if you do not work hard, you will fail. ठीक है. Clear? For example, if I say I will leave as soon as the babysitter arrives. Okay? So again, this is our conditional word, this is our connector. I will leave as soon as the babysitter arrives. Okay? So I hope this is clear to you. What is possible condition? Possible condition वो होती है which is मतलब उन conditions के बारे में बात करते हैं which are possible to fulfilled. ठीक है? Let me just give you one more example. If I say should this happens, I will leave this country. Okay, so if I talk about this sentence, is this sentence correct or not? Because if I talk about the structure of possible condition, it has if, that means the conditional word plus simple present tense. Okay, so should this happens, I will leave this country. Now here should is working as the connect, it's like it is working as the conditional word. यहाँ पे should का meaning जो है it is if. So if this happens, I will leave this country. हम लोग models पढ़ते हैं, उसमें should के हम लोग uses पढ़ते हैं. तो there is one use कि it is also used to define condition. तो should हमारा possible condition में if को replace कर सकता है. यहाँ पे ये कोई determination वाली बात नहीं कर रहा, duty वाली बात नहीं कर रहा. यहाँ पे should जो है वो condition को define कर रहा है. Okay, so should this happens, I will leave this country. That means if this happens, so it is correct, right? Should here is defining the condition. I am repeating this thing again कि should can replace if in possible condition only. Okay, so I hope the possible condition is clear to you. Let's move on to the next condition, that is our second condition. Okay, so the second condition is imaginary condition. Right, the second condition is imaginary condition. Okay, now again, why this is known as imaginary condition? Because here we are talking about the hypothetical situations. ठीक है, जो हमारी imagination है which does not exist in the real time. Okay, so यहाँ पे हम हमारी जो hypothetical situations हैं, imaginations हैं, उनको define कर रहे हैं. Now the structure of imaginary condition is if plus simple past tense in the conditional clause. That means the second form of verb in the conditional clause. And in the result clause we have would, could or might plus first form of verb. So this is the structure of imaginary condition. If plus second form of verb, that means if plus simple past tense in the conditional clause and would, could, might plus first form of verb in the result clause. Okay, so let me just give you an example. If you worked hard, you would get this job. ठीक है? Now let's come on to the example. If you worked hard, you would get this job. Right? It does not means कि आपने हार्ड वर्क किया होता तो आपको जॉब मिल गया होता है, ऐसा नहीं है. यहाँ पे वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इमेजिनेशन. इफ यू वर्कड हार्ड, अगर आप हार्ड वर्क करो, ठीक है, तो आपको जॉब मिल जाए. राइट? तो हियर वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द इमेजिनेशन. अगेन इफ प्लस सेकेंड फॉर्म ऑफ वर्ब in the conditional clause. In the result clause we have would plus first form of verb. Okay, clear? So if you worked hard, you would get this job. Second, if I say if I lived near my office, I could reach there on time. Okay, so if I say if I lived near my office, I could reach there on time. Clear? If plus second form of verb in the conditional clause. Here could plus first form of verb in the result clause. Again we are talking about the imagination. Suppose, ठीक है, if I say अगर मैं अपने ऑफिस के पास रहूँ तो मैं वहाँ पे टाइम पे पहुँच सकती हूँ. Right? तो here we are talking about the imagination. The third case is if I say that if I were a bird, I would fly. Right? So if I were a bird. Now the question here, many of you have this question in your mind, कि where is the second form of verb? Here were is the second form of verb. How come? देखो, if you people know that there are forms of be, ठीक है? First one is be, been and being. Second हमारे जो helping verbs होते हैं जैसे कि is, am, are, ठीक है, was, were, has, have, had, ठीक है, ये भी हमारे क्या होते हैं? These are again the forms of be. Right? So what is the second form? अगर मैं इसको normally मतलब अगर मैं इसको main verb की तरह काउंट करती हूँ, हमें क्या पता है कि is, am, are, was, were, has, have, ये सारे क्या होते हैं? These are basically the helping verbs which needs a main verb after that. Right? So if I talk about it as a main verb, were is the second form. ठीक है, तो here I can also write, जिसको अगर नहीं याद रहता है, if plus second form के साथ में were भी आ सकता है as it is the second form of verb. So if I were a bird, I would fly. Suppose, ठीक है, मैं bird हूँ तो नहीं, लेकिन अगर मैं bird हूँ तो उड़ जाऊँ. ठीक है, if I were a doctor, if I were a doctor, I would treat her. Okay, now I am not a doctor, but suppose if I were a doctor, ठीक है, suppose I were a doctor, right, I would treat her. Right? Now I can write this sentence as in these two sentences like this also. Were I a bird, I would fly. ठीक है, और were I a doctor, I would treat her. ठीक है, so if I talk about this, this is also a correct statement. अगर मैं इसको यहाँ पे ऐसे बोलती हूँ कि were I a bird, it also means if I were a bird. As I told you earlier also, it is not necessary कि आपका जो statement है वो if से ही start हो. तो हमारे जो were वाले sentences हैं, right, I can write these sentences like this also. Were I a bird, I would fly. Were I a doctor, I would treat her. Okay. Second is if I talk about possession, as I told you कि has, have, had जो है वो भी हमारी be forms है. So if I say if I had money, I could buy a car. Okay. So if I had money, again we are talking about the imagination. I don't have that much money, but if I had money, I have the ability to buy a car. ठीक है, I can buy a car, right? So if I had money, I could buy a car. If I inherited, मतलब if I had inherited my grandfather's property, I would travel the whole world, right? So this is our imaginary condition. ठीक है, imaginary condition basically होती क्या है, जिनको हम imagine करते हैं. We are just imagining the things. जो हमारी hypothetical situations है उनको हम define करते हैं imaginary condition में. Okay? So I hope the imaginary condition is clear to you. Let's move on to the next condition. So the next condition is third condition, type 3, that is imaginary condition. It is also known as closed condition. Now why this is known as impossible condition, and it is also known as closed condition. Why this is known as impossible condition? क्योंकि जैसा हमने first condition पढ़ा था, possible condition पढ़ा था, it is possible to fulfill those type of conditions. वैसे ही अगर हम impossible condition के बारे में बात करें, so it is impossible to fulfill these type of condition. Why? Because it totally deals with the past. Okay? हमारी जो इम्पॉसिबल कंडीशन होती है वो टोटली पास्ट टाइम से डील करती है. इन कंडीशंस को फुलफिल करना पॉसिबल नहीं है. ओके, नाउ द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ इम्पॉसिबल कंडीशन इज इफ प्लस पास्ट परफेक्ट टेंस इन द कंडीशनल क्लॉज. पास्ट परफेक्ट मीन्स हैड प्लस थर्ड फॉर्म ऑफ वर्ब इन द कंडीशनल क्लॉज, एंड इन द रिजल्ट क्लॉज वी हैव would, could, might plus have plus third form of verb. Okay, so this is the structure of impossible condition. If plus past perfect tense in the conditional clause, and would, could, might, have plus third form of verb in the result clause. Okay, so if I talk about the example, if I say that if you had worked hard, you would have cracked the exam. Okay, so if you had worked hard, you would have cracked the exam. If I talk about the structure, if plus had plus third form of verb in the conditional clause, here we have would plus have plus third form of verb in the result clause. Now what does it mean? If you worked hard in the past time, you would have cracked the exam in the past. ठीक है, अगर आपने हार्ड वर्क किया होता तो आप पास्ट में पास हो गए होते, but it didn't happen. Okay, ऐसा नहीं हुआ. You didn't work hard and you have not cracked the exam. Okay, so this is the impossible condition. अब उस चीज को रेक्टिफाई करना पॉसिबल नहीं है. Okay, next if I talk about the next sentence, if she had brought money, she could have enjoyed the trip. Okay, so if she had brought money in the past time, she could have enjoyed the trip in the past. ठीक है, अगर उसने past में money लाई होती तो वो past में उसने enjoy किया होता, but it didn't happen. Okay, so if she had brought money in the past time, she could have had enjoyed the trip in the past. Again, had plus third form of verb in the conditional clause, and in the result clause we have could have plus third form of verb. Okay, next is if I talk about the next example. अब हम लोगों ने कुछ examples किए थे imaginary condition में. hypothetical situations वाले. For example, if I were a bird, I would fly. If I were a doctor, I would treat her. If I were the president of India, I would remove corruption from my country, right? So these are the hypothetical situations, imaginary statements, right? I can also write, I can also use those statements in the impossible condition अगर ऐसा हुआ होता तो. So how can I define them? If I had been a bird, I would have flown. ठीक है? So if I had been a bird, again had plus third form of verb here, be, third form of be, right? So if I had been a bird in the past, I would have flown in the past, but it was not the case, right? Similarly, had I been a doctor, I would have treated her. Okay? So had I been a doctor, now I can also write these type of sentences like this, right? If I can also write, I can also start the impossible sentences like this, starting from had. Had I been a doctor, I would have treated you. Again, had plus third form of verb in the conditional clause, would have third form of verb in the result clause. अगर मैं डॉक्टर होता तो मैं उसको ट्रीट कर देता, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं था. ठीक है? One more example. Had I not forgotten the list at home, I would have known what to buy at the store. Okay? So had I not forgotten the list at home, again had plus third form of verb. ठीक है? I would have known what to buy at the store. अगर मैं लिस्ट घर पर नहीं भूली होती तो मुझे पता होता कि मुझे स्टोर से क्या लेना है, स्टोर पे क्या लेना है. ठीक है? So this is impossible condition. It totally deals with the past time और impossible conditions को fulfill करना possible नहीं है. ठीक है? I hope this is clear to all of you. Let's move on to the next, the last condition, that is fourth condition. Okay, so the last condition, the fourth condition is zero condition. Okay, now what is zero condition? Zero condition basically है क्या? ठीक है, और it deals with what? The zero condition deals with the scientific facts. Zero condition जो है उसमें जो भी scientific facts है, it deals with the scientific facts. Okay, and the structure of zero condition is if plus simple present tense in the conditional clause, that means first form of verb in the conditional clause, and simple present tense in the result clause. Again, the first form of verb. Now it totally, since we are talking about the scientific facts, the truth, ठीक है, that's why it has simple present tense in its structure, because if you guys know, जब आपने simple present tense पढ़ा होगा, one of the use of simple present tense is it is used to define scientific facts and universal truths. Okay, for example, if I say if you heat water, it boils. Okay, if you heat water, it boils. If plus first form of verb in the conditional clause, first form of verb in the result clause. ठीक है? Now obviously if you heat water, it boils. अगर आप water को heat करोगे तो वो boil ही होगा, condensate तो होगा नहीं. This is a scientific fact. This is true always. That's why it comes in the category of zero condition. Okay? Similarly, if I say if you freeze water, it becomes solid. ठीक है? If you freeze water, it becomes solid. If it rains, the grass gets wet. Obviously, if it rains, everything gets wet. Okay? If you go out in sun, you perspire. ठीक है? इफ़ यू गो आउट इन सन, फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर अभी के टाइम पे हम लोग बाहर खड़े होते हैं, समर्स में हम लोग सन में बाहर खड़े हैं, तो डेफिनेटली वी स्वेट अ लॉट. तो इफ़ यू गो आउट इन सन, यू परस्पायर. ठीक है? तो जीरो कंडीशन जो होती है, इट टोटली डील्स विद द साइंटिफिक फैक्ट. इट इज़ ट्रू ऑलवेज. दैट्स वाई वी हैव simple present tense in both the clauses. Okay? So these are our 4 conditions of conditional statements. I hope you know, I hope everything is clear to all of you. Let me give you a brief recap of everything. ठीक है? We have studied what are conditionals basically. ठीक है? Conditional statements वो होते हैं जिसमें हम condition को define करते हैं, in which a clause defines a condition and the another clause defines its result. There are 4 conditions. First one is, there are 4 conditions: zero condition, possible condition, okay, imaginary condition and impossible condition. ठीक है? अब ये conditions जो हैं चारों, इनका क्या केस है, क्या probability है? Listen, there are 100% chances of zero condition of getting fulfilled because it totally deals with the scientific fact or the truth. तो zero condition के fulfill होने के जो chances हैं, those are 100%. Okay? आपका जो possible condition है, उसके fulfill होने के chances 50-50 होते हैं. For example, if I say if you work hard, you will pass. What happen? Definitely. What happen if something मतलब something extraordinary happens in between or due to some circumstances and all, हम probability लेकर चल रहे हैं. There are 50% chances of possible condition. हाँ, though definitely उन conditions को fulfill करना possible होता है. ठीक है? Imaginary condition में there are some 10% chances of getting those imaginary conditions fulfilled. Okay? For example, if I say if she called me, I would meet her tomorrow. ठीक है? इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि उसने मुझे कॉल किया होता, अगर मुझे कॉल करे तो मैं कल उससे मिलने चले जाऊँ. So if she called me, I would meet her tomorrow. Definitely it is imaginary condition. There are some 5 to 10% chances. I will not say exact 10%. There are some 5 to 10% chances of getting those conditions fulfilled. And in impossible condition, there are 0% chances of getting those things fulfilled because it totally deals with the past time. आपकी जो इम्पॉसिबल कंडीशन है वो टोटली पास से डील करती है. ठीक है? दैट्स वाई इट इज़ इम्पॉसिबल टू फुलफिल दीज टाइप ऑफ कंडीशन. ओके? सो दिस इज द होल चैप्टर कंडीशनल्स. दैट्स ऑल फ्रॉम माई साइड. आई होप यू हैव अंडरस्टूड दिस. थैंक यू.